Today we uncover why the most expensive butter in the supermarket may not be as safe a choice as people think. And no, this is not one of those cheap is always better arguments. Some expensive butter really does taste richer. Some of it really does earn its price, but that is exactly why this test became interesting. I bought the cheapest butter and compared it with one of the most expensive. Same toast, same pan, same label check, same basic question. Does paying more actually give you more, or does it just make you feel like you made the better choice? At first, the expensive one had the advantage. The pack looked calmer. The name felt more trustworthy. The whole thing had that quiet premium feeling supermarkets are so good at selling. The cheaper one had none of that. It just looked like something you buy when the bill is already high. But once the butter was tasted, melted and checked properly, the difference became much harder to defend. Not because the expensive one was bad, but because the cheap one was not as weak as the shelf wanted it to look. Before we get into it, hit the hype button if you want more honest food comparisons like this, because once people stop trusting the front of the pack, supermarkets have to work a lot harder. Let's get into it. The price trap. The first thing I did was keep the comparison simple because butter does not need a laboratory to expose the obvious. I spread both on hot toast, tasted both on their own, melted both in a pan, and looked at what each one was actually made from. Just the basic question most people care about. Does the expensive one give enough extra to justify the gap? At first, the expensive one did exactly what it was supposed to do. It looked better. It felt more careful. The wrapper had that quiet confidence expensive food often has. Before I even tasted it, it had already given me the feeling that I had bought the proper one. The cheaper one had no romance. It looked like something you pick up because the bill is already high, but when I tasted them, the gap became smaller than the shelf had promised. The expensive one was pleasant, smooth, and a little richer at first. The cheaper one was plainer, but it still tasted like butter. On toast, both did the job. In a pan, once they melted down and mixed into food, the difference became even harder to defend. That is where the price started looking less like proof of quality and more like a suggestion. Then the label made it more interesting. A simple block with cream and salt is easy to understand. You know what you are buying. But some of the products that look premium in the butter aisle are not just blocks of butter. They can be spreadable blends made partly for softness and convenience. That changes the comparison completely. You are no longer comparing cheap butter with expensive butter. You are comparing different types of products that happen to sit close together. That was the first real crack in the illusion. The expensive one was not useless. The cheap one was not a hidden miracle. But the difference was not as honest as the price suggested. Some of what felt premium was already built into the wrapper, the shelf position, and the expectation in my head. And once that became clear, the bigger problem was not the taste, the aisle trick. From a few steps back, it all looks like butter. Blocks, tubs, salted, unsalted, spreadable, organic, farmhouse style, imported, own label, light, extra creamy, slightly salted. It looks simple because everything is arranged together, but the closer you get, the more obvious it becomes that these products are not all doing the same thing. A traditional block is usually the easiest to understand. It is made to be butter first and convenient second. It can be hard from the fridge, awkward on soft bread, and annoying when you are rushing, but that is because it behaves like the product it is. A spreadable tub is built around a different promise. It is made to be soft, quick, and easy. That sounds harmless, and often it is useful, but it is still a different deal. The problem is that most people do not shop in technical categories. They shop in feelings. They see a trusted name. They see the color of butter. They see a tub in the same part of the shop. They think they are choosing between cheaper and better, when sometimes they are choosing between simpler and more processed, or between butter and a butter-based blend. That is why the aisle works so well, and Lets different products borrow trust from each other. The blocks make the whole area feel traditional. The tubs make it feel modern and convenient. The premium wrappers make it feel careful. The cheaper packs make it feel like there is still a basic option for normal households. This is not about saying every tub is bad or every block is good. The real issue is clarity. If a product is a blend, it should be thought of as a blend. If it is bought for convenience, then convenience is part of the price. If it is bought for purity, then the ingredient list has to prove it. The front of the pack cannot be allowed to do all the talking. Once you see the aisle that way, the word butter starts to look overworked. It is carrying tradition, convenience, health signals, family habits, and a lot of pricing decisions all at once. The spreadable trick. The reason spreadable butter became popular is not mysterious. Cold butter is irritating. It tears toast, sits in clumps, refuses to move, and somehow turns a simple breakfast into a small argument. Most people did not choose spreadable because they wanted a food debate. They chose it because mornings are busy and nobody wants to fight a block of dairy fat before work. That is what makes the change so clever. It starts with a real frustration. The product solves something people actually feel. Then, once the solution becomes normal, people stop asking what had to change to make that softness possible. The softness becomes the whole story. To make a butter product spread straight from the fridge, it often has to be blended. Oil can make it softer, water can change texture. The result can be useful, but it is no longer the same plain idea people picture when they hear the word butter. Most shoppers do not describe it to themselves as a blended product. They just call it butter, because that is how it looks in the fridge and that is where it sits in the shop. That gap matters. Not because people cannot read labels, but because the whole design of the aisle gently tells them they do not need to. Same brand feeling, same creamy colours, same breakfast promise, same place in the trolley. The product has changed, but the emotional shortcut has stayed the same. There is also a quiet value question here. If a tub contains less actual butter than a block, but costs more because it spreads easily, then the shopper is paying for convenience. That is fine if they know it. Convenience has value. A family getting breakfast ready quickly may care more about speed than purity. But that should be a clear trade, not something hidden behind a premium mood. The strange thing is that after enough time, convenience starts to look like improvement. The old block becomes the difficult one. The blend becomes the normal one. People begin to expect butter to behave in a way butter did not naturally behave. Then the simpler product starts to feel outdated, even though it may be closer to what people say they want. That is how the market moves without making a big announcement. It solves a small annoyance, charges for the solution, and lets habit do the rest. But softness is only one part of the story. The premium illusion. A premium pack has already made its argument before the knife touches it. The colour, the weight, the foil, the calm lettering, the farmhouse words, the imported feeling, the little hints of tradition. It all says the same thing without saying it too loudly. This is the proper one. And because butter is such a familiar food, that message works quickly. Nobody likes to admit that packaging changes taste. But it does change expectation. If something costs more and looks more careful, the brain gives it a head start. The flavour seems fuller, the salt feels more balanced, the texture feels more special. Some of that might be real, some of it might be the story doing its work. Most of the time, it is probably a mix of both. Butter is especially easy to sell this way because it carries memory. It is toast, baking, jacket potatoes, crumpets, mashed potatoes, sandwiches, and the kind of food people associate with home before they associate it with a nutrition label. Brands know this. They do not only sell dairy fat, they sell the feeling that an older, simpler food world is still available if you buy the right pack. The trouble is that heritage can cover a lot. A brand can look traditional while still operating in the same modern supermarket logic as everything else. It still has to compete for shelf space, protect margin, and move quickly through distribution. The old world image may be sincere in parts, but it is also useful. It makes people less suspicious. The cheaper block does not get that help. Nobody looks at a basic wrapper and imagines a slower, better life. Nobody feels proud putting it on the table. It has to be judged more directly. That is why the comparison became interesting. The cheaper butter was judged as butter. The expensive butter was judged as butter plus reputation. That does not mean reputation is always fake. Some premium butter really does taste better. Some has a deeper cream flavour, better salt balance, or better performance in baking. A higher price can be justified, but it should be justified by the product, not simply borrowed from the brand. If the expensive butter needs the wrapper to explain why it is expensive, the product has a problem. It should still earn the extra cost when melted on toast, cooked into food, or tasted without the name helping it along. And once the wrapper stops doing all the work, the plain cheap block starts to look less embarrassing and more useful. The cheap block advantage. The cheapest butter does not get trust for free. That might be its biggest strength. People pick it up with suspicion already switched on. They check the price, they expect it to be basic. They wonder if it will taste weaker. They do not give it the benefit of the doubt, and that makes the judgment more honest. With premium butter, people often do the opposite. They want it to be better because they paid more. That is normal. Nobody wants to feel foolish at the checkout, so if the expensive one is only a little better, the mind can stretch that difference. It becomes richer, cleaner, more proper. The small improvement begins to feel like proof that the extra money was sensible. The basic block has no such protection. If it is dull, it is dull. If it is too salty, people notice. If it tastes flat, nobody blames their own expectations. They blame the butter. That direct judgment can be harsh, but it cuts through the performance around food. There is another advantage too. A cheap block often has less room to become a lifestyle product. It is not trying to sell a picture of countryside purity. It is not asking you to imagine a better kitchen. It is simply trying to be the fat you spread, melt, cook with, or bake into something else. That plainness can be valuable, especially when the ingredient list is short. The lack of glamour means there is less to decode. You still have to check it, of course. Cheap does not automatically mean clean, but when a basic butter is just cream and salt, it becomes difficult to mock it just because the wrapper is boring. There is a social pressure around this that people rarely say out loud. Buying the cheapest version can feel like admitting defeat, especially with food. Nobody wants to feel like they are choosing the worst thing for their family. Premium brands benefit from that discomfort. They allow people to spend a little more and feel a little safer, even when the actual difference may be small. That is why value is not only a money question, it is also an honesty question. What exactly am I paying for? More flavour, better ingredients, a nicer story, easier spreading, a brand name that makes me feel careful? And when that question is asked properly, butter starts revealing something bigger than taste. The status spread. A pack of butter can say more than people realise. A basic block says practical. A premium foil pack says careful. A spreadable tub says busy household. An organic block says health conscious. A farmhouse style wrapper says traditional. A supermarket own label pack says the bill matters. None of these messages are perfect or always fair, but they are there, and the shelf knows how to use them. This is why people do not always buy butter like a neutral ingredient. They buy it inside a story about the kind of home they are trying to run. A better-looking pack can make a kitchen feel more cared for. A known brand can make breakfast feel safer. A premium block can make a small meal feel like a better choice. That might sound silly, but if packaging did not affect people, supermarkets would not spend so much money perfecting it. Butter sits in a strange place. It is not a luxury in the obvious sense, but it can still feel like an upgrade. It is not essential in the way bread might be. but most homes use it often. Enough that the choice feels personal. That makes it perfect for small status pressure. The difference in price might not feel huge on one shop, so people justify it. Across months, the habit adds up. The expensive pack benefits because it lets people feel like they are choosing care. The cheaper pack can feel like compromise, even when it does the same job. That is about the feeling attached to the product. People are not only asking, will this melt on toast? They are also asking, does this feel like the kind of thing I should be buying? Supermarkets are brilliant at creating that quiet pressure. They do not have to shame anyone. They just arrange the choices so the emotional meaning is obvious. The premium one looks calm and responsible. The basic one looks functional. The tub looks convenient. The organic one looks virtuous. The shopper fills in the rest. This is where price becomes dangerous as a shortcut. People start using it as a sign of goodness. More expensive must mean better. Better looking must mean cleaner. A trusted name must mean fewer questions. But food does not work that neatly. Sometimes more expensive means better. Sometimes it means better packaging. Sometimes it means convenience. The comparison made that hard to ignore. The two packs were not just two fats for toast, they were two different signals. One asked to be judged on value, the other asked to be judged on trust. And trust is exactly where the modern butter aisle becomes weaker than it wants to admit. Trust melts first. The biggest problem is not that every expensive butter is bad or every cheap butter is good. That would be childish. The bigger problem is that the shelf makes people comfortable before it makes them informed. It gives them familiar names, soft colours, old farming language, and price levels that seem to explain everything.